After learning about the basic income program Ireland has implemented for artists living within its borders and the Irish government's plans for making that program permanent, I felt compelled to air my views about guaranteed and universal basic income. As explained by Coalition Canada, basic income is a periodic, unconditional cash payment sent to individuals from the government. It ensures everyone can meet their basic needs and live with dignity regardless of their work status. According to the Arlington Community Foundation's website, guaranteed income refers to a regular cash payment accessible to certain members of a community with no strings attached, i.e., unconditional. Guaranteed income redistributes wealth to people who need it most and who've historically been impacted by a lack of opportunities, largely people of color. In contrast, universal basic income, UBI, refers to all people getting a set amount of regular cash regardless of their income or need. Regardless of which form of basic income Canada ultimately decides to adopt, all historically disadvantaged people could stand to benefit from it, as basic income is a way to uphold human dignity, reduce poverty, and promote greater individual freedom and equality. But of course, there are those against the implementation of any basic income program, using reasons such as the potential for reduced work motivation, the cost of implementation, and the possibility of diverting resources from those most in need. I'm going to unpack these reasons one by one. The potential for reduced work motivation. To quote the late Christopher Hitchens from his documentary on Mother Teresa titled Hell's Angel, bit of a workhouse ring to that. And that behind this particular attitude is the idea that people, especially poor people, are inherently lazy and need to be compelled to work, and that their chief, if not sole, raison d'etre is to labor for crumbs of the pies they're making for the wealthy. The host of Angie speaks quite eloquently on the workhouse, the societal attitudes behind the formation and the running of the workhouse, and how the workhouse mindset permeates society to this day, but using different methods. The cost of implementation. So many sources I've consulted have stated that implementing a basic income program is less costly than poverty and less costly than the conditional income distribution programs currently in existence. For instance, welfare programs, and here in Canada, employment insurance. I would submit that those who oppose the implementation of a basic income program of any kind are among the wealthy and don't want to implement any policies that would rob them of the ability to exploit people / their labor or lead them to part with even a tiny portion of their wealth. To quote the late Assata Shakur, the wealthy will never vote away their wealth, which is the base reason why they include the cost of implementation among their objections to guaranteed / universal basic income. At the end of the day, every budget, every spending decision is a choice. And what governments choose to spend government tax money on reflects their priorities and attitudes. The possibility of diverting resources from those most in need. Guaranteed / universal basic income actually provides for those most in need, as they get what they need to survive and even thrive, while allowing them to maintain their dignity. To those who argue that guaranteed / universal basic income would divert resources from those most in need, how do you decide who's most in need? How do you determine need? And what are needs according to you? And how do you decide what resources will fulfill those needs? Canada does not currently have any sort of a basic income program, though I've come across folks who are calling for one. At present, Bill S-206, an act to develop a national framework for a guaranteed livable basic income. Short title, National Framework for a Guaranteed Livable Basic Income Act, completed its first reading in the Senate in May of this year and is currently in its second reading there. It hasn't been read in the House of Commons yet. According to openparliament.ca, Bill S-206 allows for reporting requirements. Though guaranteed/universal basic income is supposed to be provided unconditionally, meaning there are no reporting requirements. I believe the reporting requirements are supposed to placate the nation's elites, though the stated reason is to track the impact this bill has on social, health, and economic outcomes, which I guess is fair, as something like this has rarely been tried in Canada. The last time this sort of thing was attempted here was in 2016, when Bill C-223, National Framework for a Guaranteed Livable Basic Income Act, which was introduced by the Liberal Party, but it was defeated on September 25th, 2024. I hope Bill S-206 passes, even if it is as an experiment, but it still has more stages to get through before a decision is made. That is, if it doesn't die like Ada did. Ireland's basic income program, even if it's just for artists, seems so far to be a smashing success and could be a shining example to other nations, especially industrialized ones like Canada, for how to implement such programs. And doing so isn't as scary as those governing bodies assume. However, there is the issue of political will and the tendency of governments, especially those of industrialized countries such as Canada, to placate corporate sponsors and other elites. However, I hope one day, sooner rather than later, those governments realize they don't need the permission of the wealthy to tax them more heavily than they do at present, and/or not give them tax breaks, and generous ones at that, to start giving those less advantaged what they need to meet their basic needs and live lives of freedom and dignity. The thing is, given the state of the world right now, I suspect nothing short of a revolution will bring such an event about.